Ah, modern China. A natural beauty, beautiful culture, natural wonders, a powerful global economy, and a democratic govern. Oh, well, never mind. China is one of those countries that had a really rough start in its early development, and that's why you tend to see the more cautious approaches of the diplomacy carried out by the government. So what we're seeing now is a more brutalistic approach by the CCP to try and subjugate unwilling or unmotivated people into its own regime unwillingly and by direct use of force. We see this directly in Taiwan with the approach of the CCP's navy, and we see this in the northwestern region of China with the Uyghur population. And essentially, what the Uyghurs are is that they're a Chinese Muslim minority in northwestern China with heavy connections to the Muslim faith. And what this does is the CCP sees this as intolerance towards the state, and they don't allow it. And these people are brutally subjugated into camps and horrible conditions that no human should ever have to be endured. And these are conditions that are akin to the Holocaust done by the Nazis in World War II. And it's really just sad to see this done in the modern day. China's direct power comes from its control over its people. This demographic powers the entire modern Chinese economic giant we see today, with a population of almost 1.5 billion people. The Chinese government is the biggest influence over its own people. Many freedoms and liberties we take for granted in America are not often present in modern-day China. But to understand China's present, we have to understand its past. For most of China's history, it was considered warring farming nations who held little power and social regard. Many times figureheads clashed over regions of territory and land disputes. It wasn't until the 20th century that we see two distinct ideological paths start to form within the Chinese belief. One party led by the communist regime, or Mao Zedong, and the second part led by the Nationalist Democratic Party. During the Civil War, the Japanese decided to take advantage of the Civil War and invade China. This invasion caused the nationalists and the communists to work together to repel the Japanese from the island, or the mainland. In turn, the Soviets helped to arm the Communist Party of China in order to instill more communist ideas in the nation. This in turn worked, and the Soviets, with the help of the Chinese, helped to oust the Nationalist Democratic Party. And that's what we see with the conflict in Taiwan right now. It's just an ongoing of that. Throughout most of China's history, uprising time and time again have ousted the current ruling regime of China. And the CCP knows this and will do anything in order to keep its citizens in the dark. With Taiwan's growing relationship with the West, China is fearing at losing a key essential island they feel is their right to inherit. This belligerent, aggressive behavior is exactly what we see with the Uyghurs within their own borders. China is subjugating unwilling individuals into their nation regardless of their own identity. China has resorted to, quote, re-educating these people in forms of torturing and punishment in order to get these people to renounce their own faith and culture. And these conditions are very similar, eerily similar to the Holocaust of World War II. Now, China has many reasons for doing this, one of them being that their population is heavily aging. The Chinese age demographic is heavily aging, and within the next decades, we will see major economic industries in the Chinese market start to collapse. Now, China has been playing the international middleman for about 20 years now, seeing as the middleman between the West and Russia, or the former Soviet Union. This sole reason China is the connecting point of the entire global economy. And the reason the UN, frankly, can't do anything about this situation is because if they did apply sanctions, the entire global economy could collapse, crippling dozens, if not hundreds, of countries' economies and destroying the entire global economy as we know it. If we do, in fact, see sanctions upheld, I predict that we will see more regional trade-based operations and IDOs take over the power vacuum left behind by Asian markets. And we'll see little improvement on a micro and macro scale. And China's economy and market have actually been the sole reason for Western innovation and drive, I feel. Without their competition, without their competitors, we would have no one to innovate against, essentially. I fear that if the international community tries to pursue a similar route with Russia, with China as Russia, with going through the international court, that China could simply delegitimize the international court and we could see a reverse effect. This is exactly what Russia did after it invaded Ukraine, and the ICC prosecuted Putin. It just rejected their authority altogether. And this could have an inverse effect on all of China's allies, causing them to delegitimize, essentially, the international court. The only way to affect China is to stop buying from them. Right now, America is too dependent on nations that don't have their best interests in play. In my own opinion, the only future I see with America as a dominant world power is one where we do not rely on China or on anyone else. We as a nation are struggling, and instead of outsourcing our problems and jobs, we should be working on enforcing livable wages for the average American job. In the 1950s, when America made up 75% of the world's GDP, America was in its golden age. Why is this? Because of our industrial autarky back then. We have outsourced every unwanted job in this country, not leaving enough jobs for the people that still live here. And globalization has made America as a nation weaker. We need to pull back from international parties who do not respect us or want to see us fail. I predict that because of Russia's invasion, we will begin to see a less globalized market as China and Russia begin to pull away from the West entirely. I think we'll see more USMCA invoked trade. I think OPEC will become a bigger factor in the future as Russia will have less energy dominance in the market. And I think more trade systems like the EU will fight for more international market share without the Asian markets to even compete. So all in all, in international relations, power struggles, nothing changes. However, for the Uyghurs, this is an everyday nightmare. This prosecution and the conditions these people are being held in are the moves of a government who is not in control of its people, and a government who we should not associate on an international scale.